Welcome back to this new episode of our video series. So far, we created this very simple REST controller that returns hello. Welcome to my first API. And the way it worked was that let's close all these other tabs, and when we compiled and fired up the application, we compiled the application like so. Then we start the application. The application is running on port 8080, and this is the path to our API. So here we go. Localhost 8080 employee greet. And here we have got the message that we returned from our controller. This is called an API call. And the API path is this employee.greet. So now we are going to build on top of this and create an API to return an employee. But since we don't have the backend wired yet, we hard code the data, which is an acceptable way of testing an API. So let's create that controller here. We call that the employee controller. All right. And we could call it just employee, but then um, we create when down the road, for example, we create a service class. We call that employee2, and then we have a Pojo class called employee. These are all these name clashes. We could instead use a domain design approach and uh, create an employee folder and put everything, controller, service, and everything under that. And if we have a department folder, then instead of creating department controller, or create another folder called department and put the controller, service, and models and everything related to that entity in that folder. They call that a domain-driven design. Over here, we are not following that type of design, so we say employee controller over here to avoid name clashes and confusion down the road. And let's not repeat our same mistakes again and create the REST controller right up here quickly. And this controller has a public API we call that returns an employee. And basically, to do that, we are um, going to say get employee and then passing an employee ID. So the employee ID, let's make that in a string, employee ID. And but we need an employee here. We need an employee object. How are we going to create that? As a norm, we go into this top folder and we create a model package that contains all our Pojos. Um, so we call that an employee Pojo, and employee info would do, but just employee should be sufficient now. So an employee, what could it have? It it may have an ID or simply an ID because this is an employee class. So it could have, let's say, a first name, a last name, and let's say an age could have other attributes such as address. But we don't want to make this complicated. Let's keep this simple. And since this is a POJO, we need some getters and setters for these methods. So we are going to go to generate over here, and we want to generate setters and getters. So we choose all of them, okay, and yeah, we use the default template, and yeah, do we want to sort them alphabetically? No. And so let's go ahead and simply create them. Yeah, they were created. Let's manually move this up. All right, so this should be good. What else do we need over here? Probably we need to generate uh, a toString method. How about that? Let's generate toString method right here instead. Okay, and we're going to return the information, all of this information in there, in that toString method. Okay, looks good. Let's change that from ID to employee ID like so. Actually, sorry, not here, here. So this should be good. We save it. Now we have the employee. It says you have one issue over here. Let's see what it is. Yeah, we need to import this class over here. That's true. Now we need to create this employee and return it. So this employee, and then we return the employee down here. But where does this employee come from? Because this employee doesn't have any references to a real object. Usually a controller calls a service class to generate and return the objects that we need to return from the controller. So we go ahead and create that service class. We create a service package. We call this employee service. A service class should be annotated with service annotation. And let's do the same thing over here, public, and then employee, get employee. Let's pass in an employee ID, like it's a string. Sorry about that. Employee ID. And over here, we hard-code the data. Basically, we return a hard-coded employee, or what they call a dummy, for the lack of a better word, a dummy employee. And I apologize about all the employees, from all the employees, including myself. So employee emp is equal new employee. And then this employee can have a first name, last name. We could use the setters. But wouldn't it be better to have a constructor instead of calling all the setter method on this? So we go back to the employee class, and over here, let's create a constructor, add a constructor. What kind of constructor do we need? We want a constructor that passes all of this, and we want this to go further down. Let's see if we can do that. age wants to be the last one. Yeah, ID, first name, last name, and age. Sounds good. So, okay. Oops, looks like I didn't do this quite right. Let's get rid of it again. Generate, and then constructor, and choose all of them and say okay, and that'll be good. So over here in employee service, we create a new employee with the ID of 123, first name as John, last name as Doe, and the age should be like, let's say 25. And then we return this employee. All right. So in our controller, we basically wire in this uh, employee service, call it just service, and over here we reference that employee from our service, and we return it. All right, over here something is missing, and that thing is actually we have to specify the mapping. So let's do the get mapping and specify the path as employees and then employee ID. This should do. Now let's compile. Server is running. Let's restart our server. Once we restart it, it recompiles our code as well. And hopefully everything will go fine. Sounds good. Now we come up here and we update this API call to say employees. And then we over here we need to pass in an ID. Let's pass in 123. Whatever we pass over here doesn't matter because the employee has been hard coded. So here we are. This is the JSON objects that was returned from our employee. And basically, this was a test of hard coding some employee and creating a different API to retrieve an employee and its information by calling that API. So I hope this was interesting to you. What's going to happen next? We are going to build on top of this, and we are going to wire in a backend database. And actually, instead of hard coding the employee, we are going to retrieve that from the backend and return it. And this is exciting, and I hope you stick with me with the next video. Thank you.